first person we're going to hear from tonight is Jen Douglas, and she's going to kick us off as the Rhode Island Women's March. So, Jen Douglas, thank you.
Hi everyone. I have been asked to read a piece by Heather Cox Richardson. Can you hear me now? Yeah. A little bit better? Okay. So I've been asked to read a piece by Heather Cox Richardson by our original organizer, Nancy Raffi. And she is a history professor in Maine who has a newsletter called Letters from an American. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was born in Brooklyn, New York on March 5th, 1933, in an era where laws, as well as the customs they protected, treated women differently than men. She would grow up to challenge the laws that barred women from jobs and denied them rights, eventually setting the country on a path to extend equal justice under law to women and LGBTQ Americans. Joan Ruth Bader, who went by her middle name, was the second daughter in a middle-class family. She went to public schools where she excelled and won a full scholarship to Cornell. There she met Martin Ginsburg, and they married after she graduated. And what made Marty so overwhelmingly attractive to her was that he cared that she had a brain, is what she said later. Then they relocated to Oklahoma for her husband's Army service. Ginsburg scored high on the civil service exam, but couldn't find work only except as a typist. And when she got pregnant with their daughter Jane, she lost her job. 2 years later, they moved back east where Marty had been admitted to Harvard Law. Ginsburg was admitted the very next year, one of only 9 women in a class of 500 students. And a dean asked her why she was taking the place of a man. She excelled there, becoming the first woman on the prestigious Harvard Law Review. When her husband underwent treatments for cancer, she cared for him and their daughter while managing her studies and helping Marty with his. She rarely slept. And after he graduated, Martin Ginsburg got a job in New York. Ruth Bader transferred to Columbia Law, where she graduated at the top of her class. But in 1959, law firms weren't hiring women, and judges didn't want women, especially mothers who might be distracted by their familial obligations as clerks. Finally, her mentor, law professor Gerald Gunther, got her a clerkship by threatening Judge Edmund Palmieri that if he did not take her, Gunther would never send him a clerk again. After her clerkship and 2 years in Sweden, where laws about gender equality were far more advanced than America, Ginsburg became one of America's first female law professors. She worked first as Rutgers, where she hid her pregnancy with her second child, and then she went to Columbia Law School, where she was the first woman the school tenured. At Rutgers, she began her bid to level the legal playing field between men and women, extending equal protection under the law to include gender. In 1972, Ginsburg founded the Women's Rights Project at the ACLU. Between 73 and 76, she argued 6 gender discrimination cases before the Supreme Court. She won 5. Nominated to the bench by President Bill Clinton in 1993, she was confirmed by a vote of 96-3. Clinton called her the third good marshal of gender equality law. In her 27 years on the Supreme Court, Ginsburg championed equal rights both from the majority and in dissent, which she would mark by wearing a sequined collar, including her angry dissent in 2006 in Ledbetter versus Goodyear Tire and Rubber, when the plaintiff, Lilly Ledbetter, was denied decades of missing wages because the statute of limitations had already passed when she discovered that she had been paid far less than men with whom she worked. The first bill President Barack Obama signed when he came to office was the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. In 2013, Ginsburg famously dissented from the majority in Shelby versus Holder, the case that gutted the 1965 Voting Rights Act. The majority decided to remove the provision of law that required states with histories of voter suppression to get federal approval before changing the election laws, arguing that such preclearance was no longer necessary. Ginsburg wrote that throwing out preclearance when it has worked and is continuing to work to stop discriminatory changes is like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. And as she predicted after the decision, many states immediately began to restrict voting. Her dissent made her a cultural icon. Admirers called her the notorious RBG. They wore clothing with her image on it, dressed as her for Halloween, and bought RBG dolls and coloring books. In 2018, the hit documentary RBG told the story of her life, and as she aged, she became a fitness influencer for her relentless strength training regimen. She was also known for her plain speaking. When asked how many women on the Supreme Court would be enough, for example, she answered 9. Ginsburg's death has brought widespread mourning among those who saw her as a champion for equal rights for women, LGBTQ Americans, minorities, and those who believe the role of the government is to make sure that all Americans enjoy equal justice under law. Upon her passing, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton tweeted, "Justice Ginsburg paved the way for so many women, including me. There will never be another like her. Thank you, RBG." For many, she seemed the last defender of an equality they fear is slipping away. Robin Walsh, a University of Miami religion professor, watched the outpouring of grief after Ginsburg's death and wrote, "It says a lot about us that the loss of one voice leaves women and their allies feeling so helpless." I am grateful for RBG, for her advocacy and her strength, and I'm enraged that we find ourselves here. The effect of her loss of her voice and the vote on the court will become clear quickly. On November 10th, just a week after the upcoming presidential election, the court is scheduled to hear a Republican challenge to the Affordable Care Act, known as Obamacare. In 2012, the court upheld the law by a 5-4 vote. RBG often quoted Justice Louis Brandeis's famous line, "The greatest menace to freedom is an inert people." And she advised people to fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you. Setting an example for how to advance the principle of equality, she told the directors of the documentary RBG that she wanted to be remembered just as someone who did whatever she could with whatever limited talent she had to move society along in the direction I would like it to be for my children and grandchildren. Upon hearing of RBG's death, former U.S. Attorney and law professor Joyce Vance tweeted, "We should honor the life of RBG, American hero, by refusing to give in, refusing to back down, fighting for the civil rights of all people, and demanding our leaders honor the rule of law. This is our fight now. Rest in power, Justice Ginsburg. May her memory be a blessing." And it's really hard to follow up anything that Heather Cox Richardson writes, but I also wrote something myself for tonight that I would like to say. And as I look out here right now and seeing the grief in everyone's faces, you can almost feel the grief. It's palpable. But even stronger than the sadness that we're holding in our hearts right now, I see strength, and I see resolve, and I see determination. And even greater than all of that, I see the beauty of our collective mourning being channeled into action. And in March of this year, I had the honor of sitting in the Supreme Court with my daughter, and I got to hear Ruth Bader Ginsburg speak. And it was a quiet, steady voice from a giant of a woman. And when I left the chamber and walked out into the halls of that building, I cried. I cried a lot. And now, though, since I've heard the news, I have not cried. I haven't been able to cry yet, because my fear has muted my sorrow. Because the monsters that have tried to steal our government, our courts, our voices, and our bodies have somehow managed to even steal my grief. Instead, I have raged. Tomorrow I might cry, but then I'm going to organize. And that's what all of us are going to do. Because the future is going to be what we do together from here on out. It has become our responsibility to light the path of equity and hope and justice. And collectively, we're going to burn down this system to the ground. And we're going to emerge from that in these ashes, and we're going to lean on our sisters, and we're going to heal each other. And we are going to rise up, and we are going to unite, and we're going to scream until no one can ignore our voices and our demands and our rights to this country, because it is our country. And we will take it back, and we will do it with a vengeance. We will do it for RBG, and for every woman who doesn't have a voice, and for our daughters and our mothers, and all the women who have fought so tirelessly to get us to where we are today. Because we are powerful, and we are ruthless. Ruth Bader Ginsburg kept a saying on the wall of her office that said, "Tzedek, tzedek, tirdal," which means justice, justice shall you pursue. May her death be a blessing, but also, in the spirit of her dissent, may it also be a revolution. Thank you.
That was amazing. So Jen Douglas is also a candidate for state senate. So we hope that she will in fact be elected and joining us at the State House very soon.